Greetings all, and welcome to the 40th episode of the VTP, or the Veteran Trainer's Perspective. Today, we're going to be taking a look at an aspect of the Pokemon games that hasn't had a great deal of prominence in recent times, but was once a critical aspect of making the main series games and spin-offs much more enticing and worth the time of those that chose to take a break from the main games and explore the realm of events beyond what the base games could actually provide. Today, we are going to be taking a look at in-game events that are extra compared to the main campaign, with a special focus in particular on in-game events revolving around mythical Pokemon, and how the usage and occurrence has changed over time, and in turn, how that change has impacted the feel of the games in regards to the distribution and importance of mythical Pokemon.
It's no secret that over the years and throughout the generations of games that have come forth from the franchise, there have been instances where there are Pokemon at or close to the end of the National Pokédex for every generation that are either not obtainable under normal circumstances or have some sort of special lore assigned to them that makes them stand out from the rest of the crowd, not just for their uniqueness but also their extreme rarity. They can be so rare in fact that sightings of them can be seen as mere myths with little concrete proof of their existence to many, and thus have been aptly given the title of Mythical Pokémon. These entities, while recognized as genuinely real by the player base eventually, tend to be so rare that they can only be obtained via events, and their mere existence is so mysterious that they initially might not even be known by those that first boot up a Pokemon game. Though that is sadly mostly fallen by the wayside now that people can data mine games even before they launch, which has taken much of the mystique away from these special Pokemon. Even so, there is no getting around the fact that they are still extremely hard to find in the lore of the series, and thus exist as enticing prizes for those that are willing to go whatever lengths necessary in order to actually obtain them. However, what is less common these days are events in-game that, while normally inaccessible to players in normal gameplay, can either be received or unlocked through special events, or otherwise can trigger special events in-game when they are brought to a certain location, when a certain event item is obtained and used at a specific location, and so on and so forth. Here today, I want to take a look at what I see as the most direct examples of mythical Pokemon being linked to such events, and how their pattern of appearance has changed over time. And I emphasize that latter part because there has been a difference over time as to how these sorts of events have been handled. However, in doing so I also want to make it clear that these events are only covering mythical Pokemon, and not other legendaries that can be obtained through events as well, since they can be found in normal gameplay without the need of special items and Pokemon to trigger, and they will also only cover instances where mythical Pokemon can be obtained that can then be transferred into the main series games for long-term storage and use. With that said, let's take a look and see what's been offered over the years. Let's start out with the very first mythical Pokemon that ever existed, Mew. Mew's entire story of creation as far as the real-world programming of the game has become legendary over time, and it's not hard to see why, given that it was literally snuck into the code as an Easter egg because there was just enough data left to make it possible to include it at all. Originally though, despite being the very first mythical Pokemon, because of the secretive nature of its creation and inclusion, there wasn't any real sort of in-game event to mark its existence, and was only either available through glitches or through special contests that mostly never made it to Western audiences. This is what made it so appealing to many, however, as it made it a true mark of distinction for anyone to have a specimen of the species that wasn't just obtained through hacking or game manipulation of some sort. Moreover, it wasn't even the first mythical Pokemon to get its own special event, and such events have been scarce around it to say the least. The first time Mew had its own special event of sorts was back in Pokemon Emerald through an item called the Old Sea Map, which was only distributed through Japan and Taiwan, and when given to Mr. Briny, it allowed players to sail to a place called Faraway Island. It is said in lore that this is actually the same island where an expedition was sent by Team Rocket to find Mew, and while they only managed to get a hold of a fossilized hair of the creature, for players that managed to make it to the island in one piece, they have the chance to chase around and encounter a wild level 30 Mew to battle against and add to their collection. Aside from this, the only other time that Mew was available as part of a special in-game event was through My Pokemon Ranch, which would reward the player with a level 50 Mew for depositing 999 Pokemon into the game. And given the rarity of that game and the inability to really transfer it out into modern games at this point, it is sadly a prize that is out of reach for most. While Mew has cropped up time and time again in other generations, actual in-game events that focus on the mythical Pokemon were not seen past Generation 3. Next, we've got the second ever mythical Pokemon to take a look at, Celebi, and this is the Pokemon that truly started the tradition of in-game events for mythical Pokemon. In fact, this event was so important in the history of the franchise that it's also the only one that has at least been partially replicated in the anime, though that plotline was sadly dropped and never truly resolved. Celebi is a Pokemon known for its ability to travel through time, and in turn, its events often revolve around either this, or the fact that it is a protector of the forest, and can use its power to ensure that nature is kept lush and healthy in all periods of time, protecting and restoring it as needed. While Celebi did exist within Generation 2 from the onset, it couldn't actually be accessed normally until Pokemon Crystal, and even then, only in the Japanese versions of the game. You see, the item needed to actually trigger its event in Crystal, the GS Ball, was the first ever case of an event item being needed in order to access a mythical Pokemon, and was only distributed through the now defunct mobile system GB as part of the mobile Game Boy adapter, which never made it out of Japan. For those able to obtain the item, however, all they would have to do is take the GS Ball to Kurt and have him look at it for a day just as you would any of the Apricorn Ball materials. When you come back the next day, he will make a remark on it, and you can then take the item to the Shrine Ilex Forest to summon a wild level 30 Celebi for you to then battle and potentially capture. This was thankfully changed in the re-releases on the Virtual Console for the games on 3DS, as you can now trigger a new event to obtain the item through a short but careful selection of actions in-game. This is the only time that Celebi was obtainable as part of an event, but there is another event involving Celebi that can only be found in Heart Gold and Soul Silver that is also worth mentioning. In these games, if you bring a faithful encounter Celebi to the Shrine in the Forest, it will actually trigger a special event where you can travel back in time and not only learn of the true origins of your rival in the games, that being Silver, the son of the former boss of Team Rocket Giovanni, but are then whisked away to battle Giovanni in a small cave at the border between the Kanto and Johto regions, which will end in his defeat. While he did hear the message broadcasted by Neo Team Rocket at the Goldenrod City radio tower during the course of the main campaign, his defeat here showed him that he was not yet strong enough to control the group once more, leading him to keep on his journey to grow stronger, placing a narrative bookend on the final days of Team Rocket and Johto in turn. The next mythical event to discuss is also one that never actually occurred in the main series games, but instead was a part of the PAL versions of Pokemon Channel, Jirachi. Jirachi is known as a wishmaker of sorts. For every 1,000 years that it sleeps, it will awaken for only a single week to use its immense and mystical psychic powers to essentially make the wishes of all that interact with it true, for better or for worse, and has made it a sought-after mythical creature as a consequence. While it was the first Gen 3 mythical Pokemon to ever be discovered and documented, Jirachi has never gotten a special event tied to its existence in the main series games. Despite the fact that it is still one of the more interesting mythical Pokemon to ever exist, it is only in the spin-off game Pokemon Channel where it makes a notable appearance as a reward for completing the Pichu Brothers cartoon by completing the entire game for the most part. What makes this a bit more troubling is that, because of an oversight in the game's programming, it is possible for the Jirachi to be shiny, thus giving players an incentive to play through the games and their desires for a shiny specimen of this mythical species. Deoxys was and still is an incredibly unique mythical creature whose incredible power has allowed it to remain a unique force for any sort of battle, though the chances of coming across one are still incredibly slim. Deoxys was originally a space virus of some sort before arriving on Earth encased in a meteorite, but was mutated as it became exposed to extreme energy and the atmosphere of our planet, becoming the mythical Pokemon that we all know and love today. This alien entity is unique among other Pokemon because it is able to change its form either at will or through direct contact with special meteorites in-game, which has the effect of changing not just its appearance, but also its base stats and the moves it can learn naturally to grant it incredible potential in a variety of combat roles. And much as with other mythical Pokemon, it was originally locked behind a special event that could only be triggered through the acquisition of an Aurora ticket in any of the Generation 3 mainline games. This item would allow players to sail off to a location known as Birth Island, where players would be tasked with completing a simple but initially obtuse puzzle. In short, they needed to interact with a large triangle in the middle of the island, and follow it around on the shortest possible path to interact with it over and over again. Once the player has done this enough times, the triangle will reveal itself to be Deoxys, and the player will then have the chance to catch the wild level 30 specimen. Interestingly enough, the form it actually takes in these games depends entirely on which version you captured it in, with Ruby and Sapphire getting normal form, Fire Red getting attack form, Leaf Green getting defense form, and Emerald getting speed form, since this was before meteorites were introduced as a way to easily change between its forms. Another Deoxys is made the focus of a special mission of Pokemon Ranger Guardian Science, where players have to clear a special Wi-Fi event focusing on an odd temple in the ancient past. This temple could in no way be cleared by a single player by design, and while the battle against the titular alien at the end of the event was difficult, doing so would reward the player with a level 50 Deoxys that could then be transferred over to the main series games. This event is also unique though, because the form that it would come in would be dependent upon how much time was left on the clock before the temple event was over, so it offered players a sense of strategy if they're looking to obtain a specific form over another. It is also lastly noted here that Deoxys is one of the few examples of a mythical Pokemon being possible to obtain through normal gameplay as part of the Delta episode of Auras, but since that's something that can be obtained through normal gameplay, I won't say much more on it here. Manaphy was the very first mythical Pokemon that players could get a hold of in the Generation 4 games, but it's always been a strange acquisition as it is never normally found in its actual playable form in the games of its debut generation. Instead, in every instance of being able to acquire one, they would always be obtained in the form of a special egg. As while its relative Fion can't be made from an infinite number of eggs, Manaphy eggs are always treated as special and distinct from the eggs made by all other Pokemon, in turn amplifying and cementing their rarity. Known as the Prince of the Sea, this strange creature has the power to command all the living in the oceans to its whim, and is often seen as a playful but powerful creature with enormous potential to work with. What makes them even more interesting is that they can't actually be obtained whatsoever in the main series games in Generation 4. Instead, they are all only obtainable through the Pokemon Ranger games, and only in acquiring their eggs in those games by completing special missions that give you the chance to score a Manaphy egg that can then be transferred as a gift to the main Generation 4 games. This can be done with all 3 of the Ranger games that were released at this time, in turn giving Manaphy more chances to be obtained through special in-game events than any other mythical Pokemon known so far. Darkrai is a being that is more than known to be able to strike terror in the hearts of all that come across it, regardless of whether or not it was on purpose, and this has led them to mostly stay away into themselves out of the limelight of others. Even so, they are more than recognized for their incredible dark powers, as their mere presence is enough to give any nearby sleeping Pokemon incredible dangerous nightmares that can actually harm them directly, and the signature Dark Void technique is a terrifying move that can use the power of darkness itself to snuff out all the wish to remain away from the land of dreams. Getting a hold of one of these creatures is not easy, as there have been only a few instances where it's been made available through special events, with New Moon Island being the most well-known one. Here, if players are able to get access to the Member Pass to enter into and sleep in the abandoned inn at Canalave City, they will have a nightmare where they will be transported to the island and will have to battle the Darkrai there and defeat it in order to wake from the dream. Afterwards, you'll be given the opportunity to sail to the island for real and to confront and capture the wild level 50 Darkrai that lives there. In addition, there is also a special Wi-Fi event in Pokemon Ranger Shadows of Almia that would task the player with liberating Ultra Tower from villainous forces with the help of Darkrai, and the completion of said mission would then allow the Darkrai featured in the mission to be transferred into the mainline games. Shaman is up next, and what this little creature lacks in terms of intimidation, it more than makes up for with genuine flower power unlike that seen by any other. These little creatures could almost be seen as living incarnations of Mother Nature itself, as flowers and fields bloom into existence with their mere presence in an area, and they can use this power to make even the most barren of wastelands vibrant and full of color and life once more. While they tend to only use their total power in moments of extreme duress, they can nonetheless more than prove to be potent forces to deal with. Shaman first became available in Generation 4 through the inclusion of the event item simply known as Oak's Letter, which on its own didn't really do much, but if it is taken to the dead end at the end of Sinnoh Route 224, a scene will trigger with Professor Oak that will eventually lead to the creation of a bridge there that connects to a small island simply known as Flower Paradise. It is here that players can find a wild level 30 Shaman for them to battle and potentially capture. In addition, as with Darkrai, Shaman was also made available through a Pokemon Ranger Wi-Fi mission, though in this case, it came on Pokemon Ranger Guardian Signs, and required you to encounter and calm a wild Shaman multiple times before you got the chance to capture it for real, and then transfer it to the main series games for later use. Alright then, here comes the one that I'm pretty sure most people could see coming a mile away, and it's also one of the most infamous of them all, Arceus. Arceus itself is the apparent creator of the universe, or so it is told in legend, and it wielded the power of the unknown at the beginning of it all to shape the universe before creating other deity-class beasts to control the universe and give life to it all. It is revered as the greatest deity of all in Sinnoh mythology, and given the immense power that seems to be at its disposal, there may be good reason to believe it to be true, at least as far as can be told. Arceus' in-game event is one of the few out there that doesn't really involve a great deal, at least not on paper. However, what made it truly infamous is the simple fact that the item needed to trigger its special event, the Azure Flute, was never released to anyone, despite the fact that the item was a part of the original Generation 4 games, and that it could be accessed and made to function readily. The lack of its inclusion may possibly be down to the obtuse nature of its usage, as while there are locations that hint at where certain other mythical event items could be used in the games, with the Azure Flute, there really isn't anything out there to suggest that you need to take it to Spirit Pillar, as only then we will be able to play it, summoning forth a staircase that will take the player to the Hall of Origin far above the ruins, and turn align them to engage a wild level 80 Arceus in battle for the chance to catch it. At the very least though, the item was given out for Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, so the event is still accessible in modern games. Moving on to Generation 5, we can look right away at V.T.P, a strange but energetic little creature that can use its immense telekinetic and pyrokinetic powers to incinerate anything that dares to get in its way, and it is noted for its access to powerful moves like Searing Shot and V-Create that only it normally has the capacity to actually wield. The lore behind the creature is mainly looked over in the main games, though we at least know from the anime movies that it was once a close companion to the king that fathered the sons that eventually used Zekrom and Reshiram to devastating effect. V.T.P is one of the few mythical Pokemon that had its events changed depending upon whether you're playing the original Black and White games or the sequels Black 2 and White 2. In the original games, if you're able to obtain the Liberty Pass event item, you can use it at the docks of Castelia City to ride over to Liberty Island and have the chance to capture a wild level 15 Victini, though you have to defeat a couple of Team Plasma grunts there in order to actually get the chance to spar with the beast. However, in the sequel games, if you take a Victini to the island yourself, it will trigger a small dialogue scene that harkens back to the island it may have once occupied at the given destination. Keldeo is the sometimes forgotten fourth member of the Swords of Justice, but while it may be more mythical than any of its counterparts in that particular group, it is also known to still be a great warrior with a focus on special attacks that is otherwise not shared with the other members in practice, having been a Pokemon the other members rescued from a great fire that became so enamored with them that it took after them to be a protege of sorts under them. The power in its possession at least helps the strange cult more than stand out from its peers, but what might not be so well known is the fact that it actually has an alternate form that is really never seen much anymore. This is all tied to its unique signature attack, Secret Sword, a move that initially could only learn through a special event that took place in the confines of Black 2 and White 2. If you're able to acquire a Keldeo through an event in these games, and then take it to the massive structure that has deep gouge marks on it at the northern edge of Pledge Grove, a scene will play out in which Keldeo will be imbued with the spiritual essence of the other members and given the chance to learn the Secret Sword attack. In doing so, it will acquire its Resolute form which, although no more powerful in terms of base stats, is an important state as it is a symbol of the beast mastering the power of the Swords of Justice and truly becoming one of them in turn. Meloetta is unique and literal muse that is known for its power to use song and dance to enthrall and entertain others, being such masters of these acts that they were worshipped in ancient times for their amazing skills. However, Meloetta are also a bit on the emotionally frail side and hate to see conflict and war, and in ancient times, when the region of Unova was besieged by war, the Meloetta present became so sad over the loss of life that they seemingly lost their voice, unable to sing their signature relic song any longer. However, if you can obtain a Meloetta and bring it to one of the hidden bars in Castelia City, there is a musician there that will speak to you regarding the lost melody. It will be revealed that he is one of the last humans on Earth that still remembers the relic song, having been passed down the line through multiple generations, and will happily play it for you. In doing so, the Meloetta in your party will leave its device and dance around the bar as the song is played, granting it the capacity to learn Relic Song once more and use it to shift between its aria and pirouette forms. Genesect is by far one of my all-time favorite mythical Pokemon, and it can more than prove to be a terrifying force to face even as a bug-type Pokemon. Resurrected and having their bodies converted into cyborgs, these creatures were initially created by the Team Plasma scientist Dudley in an effort to appease N, turning the once natural beings into devastating killing machines. However, N felt that his project had gone too far and had violated their natural rights, taking the natural forms beyond what they were meant to be, and cancelled the project, leaving Dudley both furious and out of a job before the experiments he'd been working on somehow managed to escape. If you're able to take a Genesect to the P2 laboratory where Dudley created them in the first place, he will challenge you into a battle there. If you can defeat him, in his lament over his lost work and creation, he will allow the player to obtain the drive items that powers Genesect's Techno Blast attack, in turn truly making them the devastating beasts of war that they were meant to be in their creation. In all of Generation 6, there's only one mythical Pokemon that really gets any sort of in-game special event, and that's Hoopa, but there also isn't a whole lot to it. Hoopa itself is a normally small, mischievous little being that enjoys using its power to generate portals, from which it could then transport objects to and from certain locations on a whim. While the little creature is rather powerful even in this state, the truth of its form is that it is in a confined state, as its true power has been sealed away so it cannot cause terrible harm. This is because its unbound form is among the strongest of known Pokemon, and a fiendish monster that can create portals so massive that it can transport entire cities at will, and even bring in Pokemon from different universes on its command. If a player is able to acquire Hoopa in a Generation 6 game, specifically Auras, and take it to a Pokemon, they could then speak to a new NPC near the counter that will tell a tale of how they acquired an object called the Prison Bottle, and the dread it filled them with, and will happily hand it over to you before getting the heck out of there. It is only with this item that players can shift the Hoopa between its two different forms. The last one that can be covered here is also the most recent one, and funnily enough, the only mythical Pokemon in 3 generations since the last one to get any sort of in-game event, and that is Pecharunt. This creature is the sort of a malevolent spirit being reincarnated within a mythical Pecha Berry and using its powers to subjugate and control others to its own whims and desires, though it does have a rather sad backstory that helps to frame its otherwise fiendish acts with context. It uses the toxic liquids that are generated inside of its body to produce toxic mochi that places whoever eats them under its control to an extent, and it can further use the toxic change it naturally generates as a way to enhance the powers of others while also shackling them to its will. Despite its dark actions and powers, it does not seem to be a beast of true evil, merely seeking love and attention from those that are most dear to its heart. If players are able to acquire the mythical Pecha Berry event item, they can use it to trigger the Mochi Mayhem epilogue for Scarlet and Violet at the only shop in Kitakami, though you must also have completed not just the main campaign, but both the Teal Mask and Indigo Disc DLCs as well. This will awaken Petulant from stasis and allow it to go wild, using its toxic mochi to possess everyone that it can before ending in a final confrontation with the level 88 beast, which can then be captured upon being defeated in battle.
This is it as far as major in-game events go for Pokemon under my criteria, and while there was plenty to cover between Generations 3 and 5, you may have noticed a severe drop-off from that area between the time before those three particular generations and all that followed from them.
The former group is more than excusable, since at the time, no one really knew if Generation 2 was the last anyone would ever see of the franchise, so a lot of unique special events with mythical Pokemon weren't exactly planned out. However, if that is the case, what exactly happened with everything following this? Well, truth be told, there is a pretty easy explanation for this in my opinion, and it's the same reason that Generation 6 in my eyes is and forever will be incomplete. The Gear Project. To make a long story short, for those that are not aware of what I'm talking about, there was an initiative put to Game Freak that split the team working on Pokemon so there could be a prioritized focus on branching out and making new IPs under Game Freak. There is a lot more to it than just a summary, but in truth, the result wasn't exactly what either side had hoped for. On their end, while the many different IPs were created under this initiative, in the long term, none of them really panned out well or stuck around long enough to be seen as a genuine success. Not only did this result in less developers working on the Pokemon games, but as a result, this also likely meant that less time and resources were being devoted to spin-offs and other special events that could have been made during this time period. The impact, well as other factors that played into the absence or downgrade of some attributes, can be found in a video from Did You Know Gaming, which I'll link in the description. Definitely did not do favors to the franchise in the 2010s, and it seems like special in-game events with mythical Pokemon was one of the many aspects that took a hammer to the head from it all, so to speak. It's a great shame then that a lot of mythical Pokemon during this time really didn't get the love and attention they deserved, and it wasn't helped much at all into the future, as the practice seems to still be an active part of the issue. Though at the very least, most of the mythical Pokemon released have had their chance to shine in the anime-related movies, though it seems that such a thing is unlikely to occur again now that the anime has totally switched gears on its cast and operations. However, while this is all sort of fallen by the wayside because of actions made in the 2010s, the fact that the newest example here, Petulant, has been celebrated for its fun in-game event means that the practice might not be entirely out of the question, especially given that its presence is literally the end of the entire story of Scarlet and Violet, an honor that I think is well deserved for helping to explain the full story of the events of Kitakami, both in the past and the present. While the history of in-game events surrounding mythical Pokemon is one that has seen a rise and then a very strong decline over time, there is no denying that these creatures, for the most part, more than still deserve the status and titles within the world of Pokemon. They might not be as incredibly rare as they once were, and the events around them are short if present at all, but there is no doubt that they will continue to uphold their status through generations to come, no matter how many times we get the chance to obtain them and how they are obtained. Let's just hope that we can still give them a sense of spectacle the next time they come around to make an appearance, and truly celebrate the strange beings that push the boundaries of what legends can be proven to be real.
That's it for this episode, so stay tuned for the next episode of the VTP. Thank you all for watching this video. It always brings me great joy to see others enjoying the work I do to try and make the world of Pokemon and the fascinating creatures that lay inside of it feel as real as they possibly can. If you really enjoy my work, please feel free to leave a comment and subscribe, as I always do my best to respond to any and all comments that are left on my videos. In addition, if you wish to learn more about my work and help support it, you can find links to my Patreon page, as well as email and other contact information to my work on DeviantArt in the video description down below. Furthermore, you can find a link to my Discord server there as well if you'd like to get a first glimpse at what videos are coming up next and converse with other fans of the world of Pokemon. Thank you for taking the time to watch this, and have a wonderful rest of your day.